welcome back to this 3-part video series, Survival Tools for Parents Raising Kids with Anxiety or OCD. This is my free training designed to help you develop a therapeutic approach in your home to successfully address your child's struggles. So whether you're a parent newly struggling with your child's anxiety or OCD, or one who's been dealing with these issues for a long time, you're about to get the tools you need to not only help you bring back the calm in your house, but to give you the feeling of confidence, knowing you know how to approach your child's anxiety or OCD at home on a daily basis. And although you may already be feeling more hopeful, feeling like, finally, someone gets my struggle and the way to fix it, like so many of our AT parenting community members felt when I started working with them, you might also be beginning to doubt or question yourself. Like, do you have what it takes? Do you have the time, the skills to actually do this? Well, in a moment, I'm going to give you the tools and give you your hope and power back. And if you're sitting there saying, I'm too busy, I don't have time for this, I get it. I have 3 kids of my own with anxiety and OCD. You know what I've noticed over the years is that so many parents, and I am guilty of this myself, we tend to proclaim from the top of the mountains, I'm too busy, which is true. But the bigger reality is that we are using that phrase, I'm too busy, to avoid dealing with the things we don't want to deal with in our lives. And maybe just like me, you're doing that as well. And if you are, let me ask you this. How worse are you willing to let things get by continuing to say you're too busy and avoiding this? We can deal with this right now. Life doesn't ever slow down, but when we prioritize our kids' mental health, we actually save time in the long run. Now you might be thinking, I can prioritize this all I want, but my child won't. My child doesn't even want help. Or maybe your child intuitively knows that what you're trying to do isn't helpful. Most parents are unintentionally approaching their child's anxiety and OCD completely backwards. Often it's ineffective and sometimes even harmful, and the kids can sense that. The good news is much of what you'll be learning has no bearing on your child's buy-in whatsoever. Even little things like changes in the home, in your communication, or in your approach can shift everything. So if you're with me and ready to give this your full attention, let's dive in to hack number 1. As you saw in the first video, we want to start with communication. If we were preparing to build a house, would we just start building on top of grass? Probably not, because everything we build on top of that wouldn't be stable. We'd want to make sure that what we were building was solid enough to weather any storm. We wanted to work on the foundation, pour the concrete, and make sure it is solid before we move on. Communication is the concrete that we build everything else on. If our kids can't talk to us about their anxiety or OCD, or worse, about anything at all, that's where we need to start. And even if they're amazing at communicating their struggles, we want to make sure that we're having productive, quality conversations that will arm us with the knowledge and insight we'll need to help them with their anxiety or OCD. Communication isn't just a warm, fuzzy skill. It gives you 2 important things, trust and data. The second one isn't probably obvious, but more on that later. Let's talk about trust first. When your child trusts how you will respond to what they tell you, they open up more. And the more they open up, the easier your job will be in creating an effective home environment where they're more likely to make progress. In a minute, I'll talk about some of the simple communication errors parents often make and don't even know it. But first, let's talk about the second thing communication gives you, and that is data. When you're raising a child with anxiety or OCD, you need to be a detective and a data collector. The more you observe and understand your child's anxiety or OCD, the better you'll be able to help them. Communication isn't all verbal. Our kids communicate their struggles through behavior, through body language, and actions as well. Be a detective. Ask yourself questions like, what happens right before he started to panic? What situations tend to make her feel more anxious? What physical clues does my child give when they're overwhelmed? Do they bite their lip, nibble their nails, twirl their hair, fold their arms, get quiet? When do they exhibit those clues? When they're going to school, about to go online, right before bedtime, when asked to touch something disgusting. Even if your child isn't a good communicator, they are still providing you with ongoing data you can collect and analyze that will be priceless when you're working on creating an environment to help them. In the PDF link below that you should have downloaded to go along with this video, you'll find a worksheet that I've created to help walk you through this step by step. Take the time to do these things. Even if you think you know your child really well or that you aren't going to learn anything new, it's in the effort to be open to the process that we develop new insight and new skills. Okay, now on to some of those communication mistakes parents often make and don't even realize it. Our words have the power to shut down or open up communication with our kids. It's power we don't even know we have. When you've spent over 2 decades trying to get kids to talk in therapy like I have, your sanity depends on finding the perfect words to avoid shutdown and to get to the heart of their struggles. So here are some communication hacks that I've used. Now these may be simple, actually super simple, but trust me, these slight changes can make a huge difference. So instead of saying, "Why does that scare you?" say, "What scares you the most about that?" Avoid starting off your questions with why. Even though most of us aren't trying to sound accusatory, a why question around anxiety or OCD can put a child on the defense. Many kids already feel embarrassed or ashamed for having some of their thoughts and feelings, and we don't want our questions to make those feelings worse. When we do an easy reframe of the question and say, "What scares you the most?" we are sending a message with our language that we understand their struggle and that it's valid, and we just want to know what bothers them the most. Remember, all of our children's struggles are valid, even if they don't make sense to you. Anxiety and OCD don't have to make sense, and often, honestly, they won't. But their feelings are valid and their struggles are real, no matter what we think, and we want our language to convey that. That shift alone has made a massive impact on how often kids will open up to me. Here's another one. When your child is venting to you and talking about a situation, instead of asking any direct questions about the situation, reflect back how they're feeling and then wonder out loud. For example, let's say your child is really upset at their lifelong friend and they come storming into the house, furious, and they say, "I hate him. I never want to talk to him again." Instead of asking any questions like, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" or "Oh, come on, honey, you've been friends forever." No. Sit with your child's emotion for a second. Say something like, "Ooh, he must have really upset you." It might seem awkward to some of you, but when you literally just reflect back how someone might feel, it's often an invitation for them to tell you more. These things encourage communication. It is like opening up a door and inviting more conversation to come in. When you've given your child more time to vent and get their feelings off their chest, then, instead of asking for more details, which is totally normal, wonder out loud. For example, instead of saying, "What did he do to make you so angry?" try, "I wonder what he did to make you feel so angry." Now, I know you might be thinking, "Really, Natasha? I mean, really, what's the difference? What's the big deal?" But these small changes often make a big difference. Direct questions feel like they require a direct response. If a child isn't wanting to talk about it, even a simple question like that can make them blow up or shut down. When we wonder out loud, there's no expectation, no pressure to answer if they don't want to. It is another invitation to keep that communication door open. Okay, the last one I want to mention is something I deal with a lot as a therapist, the "I don't know." That kills any conversation. "What's wrong?" "I don't know." "What's upsetting you?" "I don't know." Do you get that answer often at your house? Now, even though we can't force our kids to talk to us, we can at least stack the deck in our favor. If your child says, "I don't know," try, "Well, if you had to guess, what would it be?" Or, "I understand you might not, but what's your best guess?" Or, "Okay, but if you did, what would it be?" Now, if your child continues to say, "I don't know," leave it. But I can't tell you how many times I've used that and I've gone on to have a much more in-depth conversation with kids. It does work sometimes. By the way, this isn't only helpful for our kids. Try it with anyone you're trying to communicate with and see what happens. I have included these and a few more other communication hacks in the PDF, and you can download those below. I also have included a free PDF guide on how to use effective language to find your child's core fear. Knowing and understanding what is driving your child's anxiety or OCD is so helpful in coming up with effective ways to tackle it. So, as you can see in our first hack, you don't need your child's cooperation, motivation, or buy-in to change the way you talk to them. These are things that can only help in the long run. Okay, on to hack number 2. When we're setting up a home environment to help our kids, we want to eventually work on setting up challenges, or what we therapists call exposures, that have them moving towards their discomfort, not away from it. Having your child do those things once a week in therapy is not good enough. It's what happens in between those sessions that makes all the difference in the world. It is the difference between slight progress and monumental progress. And this isn't something that we do willy-nilly when the situation presents itself. When your child is stressed or is refusing to do something anxiety-provoking. No, it's something you set up with them. It's something you schedule. It's something that's planned. It's helping your child move from a victim mentality to an empowerment mentality. It's moving them from playing defense to finally playing offense with their anxiety or OCD. It's a complete game changer, and it improves your child's long-term progress and really trains them how to tackle and manage their own anxiety or OCD throughout their lifetime. But this only happens if you're doing this in your home and on a regular basis. Now, this might be a completely new idea to some of you. Some of you might have thought that if you can accommodate the anxiety or OCD or help your child avoid those things that upset them, that things would eventually get better over time. Or those of you that are more knowledgeable about how anxiety or OCD treatment works might be saying, nope, I've tried that. My child will not do anything to face their anxiety or OCD. Been there, done that, it didn't work. And that might be the case. Or you might be like so many other parents I see who are trying to get their kids to do these things, but in all the wrong ways. Often as parents, we want to see big progress. We want big change, and we want to see it fast. And I get it. I have felt the same way with my kids. But an important thing to remember is that small steps lead to big change. Here are 3 of the most common mistakes parents make, and they don't even know it. Okay, number 1, they are too forceful and they pressure their child. And this can happen because they don't understand the level of fear their child is experiencing, or it can also be caused due to their own panic watching their child go downhill fast. Either way though, the more we pressure our kids, the more they resist. So it just doesn't work. Okay, mistake number 2 is we move right into trying challenges without fully understanding our child's anxiety or OCD. That's why working on communication and playing detective is so important. Often we're seeing the symptom of a larger core fear issue. For example, I might have a child who is scared to separate from me, but the core fear might be that I will disappear and not come back. Or it might be that they think I'll die. Or I might have a child who is scared they'll throw up, but the core fear is that they'll lose control and everyone will make fun of them. Or I might have a child with moral OCD who's afraid they might say a bad word, but the real core fear is that they might turn into a bad person. And it's not always thoughts that drive OCD. It can be feelings. I might have a child that needs to have things just right or evened out, but the real fear is discomfort that may never end. Or I might have a child that can't stand to see or touch certain things, but the real fear is that they'll be overwhelmed with disgust and won't be able to tolerate it. So understanding the core fear or feeling that is driving the anxiety or OCD will help you set up better challenges or exposures that will get to the heart of the matter. The PDF I just talked about can help you with that. Now, the last common mistake comes from parents who get the importance of developing challenges or exposures. They are more educated and are well on their way to creating a home environment that will foster big change. But they are starting off with challenges that are too hard, and their child is flat out refusing to have anything to do with it. So, regardless of what mistakes sound familiar to you, what would be an effective way to approach challenges? Well, first, you need to have some key ingredients. You can't build a cake if you don't have the eggs, right? Same goes for your challenges. You need to have some decent communication and trust going on, because without it, this cake is going to be half-baked. And second, for effective challenges, you have to have a pretty good handle on what is driving your child's anxiety or OCD. Understanding your child's core fear will help you make highly effective challenges or exposures at home. And lastly, you need their buy-in. Remember in video 1, we talked about how you are in the passenger seat and your child is in the driver's seat. Passengers don't just grab the wheel and try to steer the car, because if they did, the car would not stay on the road for very long at all. We'll talk more about buy-in and motivation in our final hack in a moment, but let's talk about the other ingredients. If you don't have those ingredients, you don't just decide not to bake the cake. Do you remember how hard it was for your child to walk? They first did that weird rocking thing on all fours, then they pulled themselves up, and then they fell down immediately, then they took a few steps, and then they fell flat on their face. What if our kids just gave up and decided it was too hard to walk? I'm done, that's too hard. We'd be carrying some pretty heavy kids right now, right? Well, the same goes for anxiety or OCD. What is the alternative to working on this? To have them live with a lifelong debilitating disorder that often grows and gets worse with age? I know that no caring parent wants that for their child. I know I don't. Or do we have to figure out what ingredients are missing and start there? So, if you need to work on communication, start with communication. If you're stuck on the core fear, work on that. Gathering your ingredients is taking action, regardless of what ingredient you're working on. It is taking active steps towards helping your child have long-term stability and happiness. We can't skip over ingredients if we want to use a recipe that's successful. Now, if you have all those key ingredients, and don't worry, I'll talk about that hard to find ingredient called buy-in in a moment, but if you have all the other ingredients, let's talk about how to start. First, sit down with your child and talk to them about what's the biggest thing that anxiety or OCD is ruining for them. Ask them if they had a magic wand, what would they want to fix right away? What can't they do because of their anxiety or OCD that they wish that they could? Get them to talk about what would it feel like if that struggle went away. Now, if you're saying, Natasha, my child would never sit down and talk to me about this kind of stuff, then you aren't ready to make this recipe. You're missing the communication ingredient, so you need to focus on that. But let's say your communication and trust ingredients are solid, and you have a pretty good handle on your child's anxiety and OCD themes and core fears. And for those of you that don't worry. You'll get there, as so many parents have in the AT parenting community. Then next, you'd want to brainstorm with them some possible challenges or exposures they can start doing. I like the idea of a menu that your child can pick from. You start off with telling your child that they aren't necessarily going to do any of the things you'll be talking about, but that you're just coming up with some options. Have them rank the difficulty of these challenges from 1 to 10, 10 being the hardest. I've included a menu worksheet in the PDF if you want to use that as you go through this exercise with your child. Now here's the deal. Even if your child isn't ready to make big moves towards their anxiety or OCD, can they make small moves? Isn't it more important that we focus on making our child feel successful than worrying about how fast they're getting to their big goals? Allow your child to create teeny tiny challenges, or if they aren't coming up with any, add a few yourself, ones that you know wouldn't be too hard for your child to do. If they're afraid to separate from you, could they go in the other room for 30 seconds? Tiny. If they're afraid of throw up, can they see the word throw up? Too much? Can they see the word throw? Super small. Challenges don't have to be small, but when you've had resistance in the past, or you have a child who feels too overwhelmed, this can lower their guard and get their buy-in. And once you have your menu options, have your child pick something from the menu to do each day. They can pick the same one over and over or mix it up. If you're just starting this, your main goal is to just get traction, to get them to feel some success. Once a week or every few days, you can revisit the menu and make changes. Now you might be saying, nope, they won't do it. I already told you. And that may be so, but there is one final ingredient we need to add, and that is the sugar. What good is a cake if it doesn't taste sweet, right? I don't know about you, but if you told me to go swimming with sharks, even if you put me in a steel cage and swore I'd be safe, I would need something pretty big to sweeten the pot. Well, the same is true for our kids with anxiety or OCD. We're going to be asking them to do some really hard stuff. And even if you don't think it's a challenge, it is a challenge for them. So the final ingredient is buy-in, and there are some simple hacks that can help with this. Okay, number 1, gamify things. Kids love to earn stuff, and they're going to need a pretty big carrot to go swimming in that shark tank. So set up a reward system to celebrate their bravery and effort. This not only helps get some traction, But you know, it also makes battling anxiety or OCD more in general fun. And our kids need that. I normally recommend starting off with something they can earn right away. We don't want to make it too hard, or they might lose their momentum before they even begin. So start with something simple and easy. And then as they start feeling some success, turn to points, where they can exchange their points for something they're working towards, or even get more creative and make a bravery store or a virtual bravery store. But be careful. Here are some ways parents sabotage this without even knowing it. They don't keep track of the points, or they don't ever buy or give their child the reward. That actually happens a lot. Or the child does something unrelated and they take points away. Eek! Remember, for an effective behavior plan, you can't take already earned points away, or you completely lose your child's buy-in. Or they let the child earn something way too big and the child feels like it's too hard and they'll never get it. Or they only allow for super tiny rewards that aren't motivating for the child. Now, if you're saying, I've tried that, Natasha, and my child said they won't do it, even if we try to bribe them. Well, first of all, it's not bribing, and the use of that word might say where some of your blocks are. It's celebrating an incredibly hard, brave task your child is doing while ignoring every neuron in their body that is firing off warning signals for them to stop. And second, it could be due to a few possibilities. One, it's possible you're not finding a small enough challenge. Even the easiest challenges are a place to start. Remember when we asked them what anxiety or OCD was holding back for them? That puts a spotlight on a back door to their motivation. You wish you could sleep over at your friend's house? Let's talk about some small steps that we can work on to build up to that. Oh, you want to be able to pet the dog without feeling contaminated? Let's talk about some small things we can do that will get you there over time. When we pick challenges that speak to their goals, to their desires, we are more likely to have buy-in, especially when the first step is a teeny tiny move in the right direction. Another possibility is that you are not finding an enticing enough reward. Every child has a currency if you look hard enough. For instance, in my house, everything extra is earned by doing challenges. Everything. They want Robux, they earn them with challenges. They want candy from the grocery store, challenges. They want that extra fancy water bottle when we could just get the cheaper one, challenges. They earn points and that becomes their wallet. If kids don't want stuff, then have them earn experiences, a special movie night, a trip to the ice cream store, a special baking night. Get creative. Now, if you're hitting a solid brick wall, the last possibility is that you're trying to move forward and bake this cake without having some of the key ingredients. In that case, you'll need to go back and work on those earlier steps before trying to mix everything together. The parents I've worked with who have made the biggest progress were those that realized they needed to take their time working on all these ingredients, and they understood that progress comes in bite-sized pieces, not in big chunks. Now, I know we covered a lot today, and some of it might be a bit fuzzy or confusing, and that's why I would definitely recommend printing out the PDF below and going through it more thoroughly and slowly, as well as joining us for my live class tomorrow in the Facebook group that I created just for us for this series. And you can find the times and links below, and I look forward to talking to you live to help you help your child. Being a committed parent, willing to try anything to help your child, I know you'll be open-minded to trying these approaches that I've been talking about and soaking up everything I have to teach in this video series. But you might be thinking, yeah, I can try those things, but how am I supposed to create a therapeutic parenting style at home when I'm exhausted? It just doesn't feel sustainable. Plus, I need more help understanding anxiety or OCD and setting up these challenges that you're talking about. I don't have the first clue on where to start. Well, that's why in the final video, you're going to get a roadmap with the 4 crucial elements needed to create that long-term success in your home, where you'll feel secure and confident in how to handle your child's anxiety or OCD, and you won't be too exhausted to make it happen. So if you are ready to create a home that reduces the chaos and helps your child's anxiety or OCD, I'll meet you in the final video.
Yeah.